Thank you, and thank you, Lori, for once again hosting this meeting. Since we're supposed to talk about, what methods of soaring are used, since I've never soared a horse, I don't know, but I do know. Why am I here? I have a long list of credentials. I was brought in initially by the USDA because I've been involved with horses my entire life. And I want to point out one thing. I was fortunate enough to be part of the ad hoc committee that wrote the white paper, Mrs. Crawford, with all due respect. Dr. Messer's here as well. And any resemblance between the Blackburn bill and the AAEP white paper is purely coincidental. There is none of the intent in there. That Blackburn bill, no, it is not a reflection of the AAEP white paper except for a few key words. Not the intent. So I was originally brought on as a USDA consultant and bulldog. I began my relationship with the USDA in December of 2007 when we were asked to bring thermography back into the inspection process. So part of that was we arranged, myself and some others arranged to introduce it and actually do a little research on the side. So it actually began with a study event that occurred at the Calsonic in December 2007 so we could start to see what we could see. So from that point forward, we collected thermographic and we've collected radiographic data to correlate that data from inspections. The goal of all that was to determine what soaring tactics are being utilized. So from that, we wanted to know, what are they doing? But more importantly, what methods are being used to hide these tactics from inspection? After being involved for a short time, it became crystal clear to me that, okay, this is a game, okay? Horses, and I try to listen to everybody. Horses are being soared that are being brought in, but the game is to get through inspection. If I can get through inspection, I can show my horse. So it's like, all right, so therefore you're going to come to an inspection and try to do anything and everything you can to get through the inspection, to try to hide that. So our goal came to be, how can we best detect these tactics? And detecting these tactics is a combination. So it's a combination of objective information and subjective information that brings down to, here's the evidence. So initially, oh, and by the way, this is objective testing already. It's not been mandated in any bill. The USDA decided to do it themselves. So thermography initially was used as a screening tool. And why was it initially ruled? I know the USDA took a lot of heat. That was because I insisted that it only be used as a screening tool. One, needed to collect more data. Two, there's a lot of information there, and not just a hot spot means you've been soared. It means something's going on, and I want to know what it is. So initially, all horses were evaluated and assessed as normal or not normal. Truth is it, most of the walking horses that come up were not normal. So that became really boring really fast. I have found some normal horses. They are there. They show up. They're usually flat shot, but they're there. Okay. Then if they were normal, they would proceed with a routine inspection. If they were not normal, they were actually given the opportunity to go back to the barn. So the first year we did this, a few people went back to the barn. They didn't want to go through inspection. Like I wanted to take names and numbers because that already told me something. You knew we already caught you and you're just going to leave. But it didn't take very long. The industry is very pliable. Boy, they get around things fast. And it took them long to go, well, thermography really doesn't mean anything. We just go up here, we go through the routine, then we're going to go into the inspection. And I went, fine, that's what I want you to do. Because then we're going to observe, and we're going to correlate images, and we're going to correlate data. And then when I have the data I need and enough information, we're going to go on. So initially, I had some interesting finds. I saw the oddest cold pattern. Many of you may have already seen this. See that cold area there? That doesn't exist in nature. Thermography is a reflection of the vascular system. And the vascular system does not stop at the fetlock and then reappear at the hoof. So I was like, why, that's interesting. But moving right along, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just going to tell you that's interesting. So the other thing I came to the conclusion of, our initial images were inadequate because I really wanted to see the back of the pastern. And this was our initial thing for looking at the back of the pastern. And you had to sit there and you had to kind of get between the horse's legs and get a little image like that. And I decided I actually didn't trust the handlers. I'm sitting behind that horse and going, I'll just take 2 steps back and I'm drop kicked through the goalpost alive. And I couldn't see what I wanted to see. I couldn't get the detail. We could see flashes. I could see images. I really wanted to chase, and so we got permission to change that. And since we were swabbing horses anyway, you pick the leg up, and now I got a close-up view. Now I got a beautiful view of the back of the pastern. And this is a normal pastern where the pocket right there is the warmest spot. The vasculature, if it shows up, will show up in here. This is just over the tendon. And mostly it's cool because there's not a lot of vasculature right there until you get right down here at the coronary band. So, the cold pattern. I wanted to do something about the cold pattern, but we also have to stay very independent. We don't want to be seen as doing anything prejudicial. So at that time, swabbing was all done on a random basis. So I convinced everybody I'm pretty random. Let me just pick them. So I'm just going to sit here at the thermographic camera and I'm going to pick the horses that we're going to swab. Okay, deal? Yeah, deal. So I go on experiment number 1. So in 2011, as they were coming up for the celebration, I randomly selected horses to be swabbed. But I picked these horses that all had this pattern because it was driving me nuts because I didn't understand it. And that year, 52 of 52 horses that were swabbed were positive. And I went going, yeah, I thought so. And the majority of those horses were positive for canes. Lidocaine, benzocaine, and I'm like going, yeah, okay, now I understand. Now, I will say, we've continued to follow this long, and you get this cold pattern, and not as many positive. But I'm like, one of the things I learned, and actually a good friend of mine once said, if you want to be a good warden, first you have to understand the poachers. Or you even have to be a good poacher. So, to me, this pattern is not associated with any known pathologic process. I've been doing thermography for over 35 years on horses, and I cannot find this pattern associated with anything pathologic, meaning a lameness, an injury, or anything like that. There is only one reason for this pattern. This shows an adulteration with the intent to obstruct reactivity to palpation. And I'll show you, and we've got the evidence, we've shown the evidence. And so I've searched to try to find out what else they're doing, and I finally figured that out at the trainer show. But we'll move on. So use of the new view. One of the use of the new view, I wanted to get a nice close-up view so I could really see the back of that pastern. Because a lot of horses were coming through, and with the idea that they're coming through inspection to get through inspection. They've already been conditioned. If they've been sore, they've been conditioned. So they're coming through there. The horse already knows what they're supposed to do. They just got to get it to hold still, be still. So to me, a scar becomes very important. You only see these kind of scars on one breed. And I have looked, and I've been a veterinarian for a very, very long time working on horses. And you only see these scars on one breed and one small segment of this breed. And so, but a lot of horses get through that had scars. They're found post-show, etc. So that bugged me. And this is what they might look like post-show. And I was like, so we started looking at them. So we looked at that and show you things. So you see this pastern here. It's hot in the pocket. See these funny lines? Those darker lines there? Yeah. Now you follow these horses through. Bingo. Post-show, they're getting caught. You can't find them pre-show. So, but now if you start looking for them, so you see this heat emanating from the pocket. That's normal. The I call it the corrugated pattern for lack of anything else, because it looks like a corrugated road. Why would you there's nothing else that can do that. Wounds don't do that. Fences don't do that. That's a pattern, and it doesn't look just like that. So we did. We followed along. We followed them through, and what do you find? You find scars. So other things that we can find in not normal patterns that show up is that here you can quite clearly see there's the pocket's warm. It's warm down through the central sulcus of the foot. That can happen because of hoof contracture. Not done necessarily on purpose. It happens to a lot of other padded horses. But I don't know why that hot spot there, and I really don't know why that's there. It should be even. So I have thermal asymmetry. Why? And it frustrates me when I go, that really should be a hot spot, and it don't always palpate that way. And I think I have my thinking, but I have to do more proving. So this just needs more things to scrutinize it even more. Just looking at some of the other patterns we can see. So here again, here's another one with the corrugations. See those lines? It can't occur anywhere else. And we can tell the difference between that and a real scar. A real scar looks like that. Okay, it has a mark. It follows a certain thing. And even though that's a vertical scar the same way, it's different. It indicates a real wound. Other not normal patterns, here's again another one. Hot in the pocket, and I see this pattern. And I can imagine, a chain rubbing up and down on there and making that thing. But you need more evidence. So we're still looking at that. And now, especially after we started introducing the patterns, the VMOs are really on top of things now, and I think excited to follow things through because now they have a big tool a map that shows the way to find what they need to find. So here's one just to show you recently at the trainer show. This was a horse that came up, looked really good, and we looked at it thermographically, and we have rules they follow, but the horse went through, but I immediately went over to the VMOs and went, you guys really want to inspect this horse? Well, I'm not going to tell you what I saw, but you really want to inspect this horse. So the horse was found to have bilateral scars, particularly on this foot here. And I asked the VMO, I go, draw me a picture of the scars. You could not see them. You could feel them. He said he could feel them distinctly. He couldn't get a photo of them. I said, but draw me a picture. And he drew me a picture, and I said, you're going to want to see this. So I walked him over, showed him that thermal image, and that's the two scars, exactly the two scars that he saw. He was so excited. He was like, I'm going to stay over here all night. Nah, I'll just come and get you. But we're going to, it's teamwork. It's teamwork. But we got it, and those are scars. Okay, so we started collecting more data on more patterns. Now we're going to have more correlation. The more things we see and can follow up. We also do a lot of digital radiography. So that was introduced and going, what are you supposed to find with digital radiography? You're supposed to find the pressure shod horse. I'm like, okay. So what am I going to look for on a pressure shod horse? Okay. I went into it, looked for anything weird. Weird is good. I specialize in weird. So we needed a way to look inside the hoof and the package. I mean, you can hide lots of stuff in there. I'm sure if I was a terrorist, I probably could hide a bomb in there. Okay, so we can look for illegal shoeing. We can try to look for pressure shoeing, et cetera. So the HPA has very specific prohibitions. One of those prohibitions is shoeing or trimming can reasonably be expected to cause a horse to suffer pain. You can't have any objects or materials between the pads and the hoof that's not natural and accepted material. So if you look at this horse here, got a nice big package on there, and you go, whoa, I have metal. Nice big metal. Okay, I can tell you, that's what's called a Chadwick spring. Chadwick spring is something that is used on horses that have heel contractures to try to get them to widen out. The problem with the Chadwick spring is that I can load that spring so hard, I can create pain. And I've even had veterinary certificate, well, this Chadwick spring's put in there for veterinary use. I'm going, yeah, but that doesn't tell me that's how it's being used. I don't know how it's being used. It's against the regulations. You're out of here. And I haven't seen a Chadwick spring in 2 years. At least not one that we found yet. Other illegal stuff. Illegal metal can't be used in the pad itself. And I love this one. This one came up and we're like, holy smokes. Because it's all painted black, so you can't tell what's that. And so clearly the bright white substance is something metallic. Nothing else shows up to that, as a metal. I mean, and that density, it'll have to be something like titanium, gold, I don't know, silver, lead, because lead's cheap. Gold and silver are a little expensive. So you can look at that, and sure enough, those pads show up. And those are illegal, and they're easy to find on radiographs. And somebody doesn't read the rules correctly, and they're usually eliminated. Others get really clever. Here's a piece of lead cut out in the pad. See that, rascal? Oh, very clever. And then here's one put on with the back pad. They slipped it in their back, and then they drive a bunch of nails, so you can't tell all the difference. And it, too, it's not legal. See you later. So what constitutes illegal metal? Some of you probably have seen this radiograph before. It shows up in lots of things going, oh, my God, look at all the nails. Well, and I've had long discussions about all those nails. And it's like, well, that pad gets used over and over again, going, yeah, but then why do I need all those nails there? You know, and not so much there. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything there. Now, this is another type is where they actually put the shoe on the foot, and that's done to actually help the health of the foot, which is done in a few. And then the pad and the attachment is attached to the shoe that way. So just a different way to do it. So when we look at metal, what we're looking for is there's legal metal, you get to go on, and there's not legal metal with metal inside the package, etc., and that is illegal. Other prohibitions. Artificial extensions, acrylics held onto the toes, etc. So the beauty of radiography is that now I can start to look at some of these. Even though it's been polished black and everything looks like, acrylic has a different density than regular hoof wall. So what we look for that is that different density. And even some of the ones that match really closely, if you look at them on the radiographs, you can see air bubbles, you can see differences. On a good radiograph, a normal hoof wall, I can see striations in the hoof wall. Acrylics don't have striations, so I know when they're there. And if they violate the rules, they're out. Pressure shoeing. Pressure shoeing has been tough because I don't think most of them were brought in pressure shod. They've been maybe pressure shod, but they're not coming to the inspection pressure shod. So snooping, looking, you gotta look really hard. So here you got one going, oh, you're out of here on illegal metal. But just a minute, look at this a little harder. Oh. Look over here. Now I'm gonna go backwards. Now, if you're gonna pressure shoe, what you wanna do is pressure at the toe, because you want to lift it up, and it's the way the gate's going to come. So you look at this, why in the world would I have a rolled up pad of some sort or material pushing up the pad? There's no contact there at the toe, but right under the third phalanx to put pressure on that sole, there's an object in there. Why would you have that object? There is no earthly reason to have that object except that you've been pressure shod, or at least an abnormal shoeing. And the way to know if they're really pressure shots, you're gonna have to take the package off, and if they test positive on the hoof testers, bingo. Other things that have been done, you look at pressure shoeing. So, hey, there's just a few nails in that one, that looks pretty good, but look at this horse. This horse is carrying 6 inches of toe, and look how actually thin the sole is, and that's all packaged material. Now, when you use packing, packing should go into the heel region. So when you have packing that extends forward to the frog, that's not normal. Packing is not used that way. The packing is used, again, a little bit like the Chadwick spring, help the foot expand, and anything here at the toe is usually very, very light. So there's the end of the frog there. So I have a lot of pressure. And if you see, this is going to be a dense putty that's put in there, and if you look at this distance between that, that's to put pressure on the sole. Other things we found. Now, these weren't pressure shod, but this just brings up a point. These were found last year at the celebration, and we looked at the radiographs and went, holy mackerel, look at that. I had a nail driven through those pads and into the frog. Why isn't that horse crippled? Get him back over here. And so the horse came back over, and he wasn't painful. We took the nails out, and that was just into the insensitive frog. The frog is a keratinized tissue, so there's sensitive and insensitive. If it's into the sensitive frog, and then we pulled the nails were dry. These guys are throwing themselves on the ground. Oh, it was just a mistake. Like, that is a pretty serious mistake. But I don't think in these two cases it was their intent. But it's like going, this is done after they go through the inspection. So I've been on my crusade that they shouldn't be able to even touch the foot after inspection. But that's only my personal opinion. Okay, so what else are we looking for? Continuously, we're looking at radiographs, looking. And I've looked for a long time with hoof imbalance, because one of the things that actually struck me early on, and I took measures of what's called solar angle or palmar angle, or whatever you want to call it. It's actually the angle of the bottom of the coffin bone with the angle of its ground surface, whatever that ground surface is. So that would be a set of pads, because when you start adding pads, that's a false ground surface. We looked at medial lateral hoof balance. So looking at a ground line, looking at hoof wall length, and then looking at the angle of the bone inside the coffin, or inside the hoof capsule. We also look for rotation, where the third phalanx or the coffin bone is actually rotated. And based on other research, any horse that has greater than 5 degrees of rotation, that is a sore horse. And we have been criticized for that, going, well, a horse with 5 degrees of rotation could show. And my argument has always been, it's not whether it could show, it's whether it should show. And when I became a veterinarian, I take my oath very serious. I took an oath to the welfare of animals. And I don't think that's much for the welfare. So I don't think he should show. And we have found that the Tennessee Walking Show Horse has the most imbalanced hooves in the world. And I've tested these against quarter horses, thoroughbreds. I've got because of my practice, I've got a whole slew of them. I didn't have enough non-show Tennessee walking horses, so I made a phone call to people around the country, and they were generous enough to send me. So I've got now a bunch of normal walking horses that have never been in show shoes, and I can tell you, those horses got some of the best feet I've ever seen. But horses in show shoes, if you're going to put these kind of packages on horses, you've got to do a better job, not a crappier job, And that's coming from my farrier background. When you put those kind of levers and that kind of weight, everything that you do has to be better. And these really were not very well maintained feet, very poor management. So there would be rotation there. So what's new? What else are we looking for? I started noticing that the dorsal hoof walls were thin. Now, having measured horses' hooves my entire life, that's been part of my as a veterinarian is in foot care. Especially any long-footed horses, especially gaited horses, usually have a thicker hoof wall. 20 millimeters in thickness. Thoroughbreds have a thinner one, maybe 16 to 18. But I was finding horses going, wow, they're less than 16 millimeters. I'm finding them less than 14 millimeters. Now, is that a violation? I don't know. What we're seeing is that wall is just abnormally thin. And you can see them. You measure it above the band, it's one width, and below the band, it's thinner. It should be wider. That's just the way the foot grows. And so it's being thinned out. For what reason? Don't know. The other thing that we're noticing is that, again, horses with 6 inches of hoof length, they should have a really deep sole depth, 15 millimeters or greater. And then we're finding these horses that actually have less than 10. And a horse like this with less than 10 is there's no reason for it. So we're looking for that. So here you can see quite clearly, here's one with a relatively normal wall, and you can see it's nearly the same thickness, a little thinner down here, but look how drastic this one. Look at the thickness up there. Look how thin that wall is. And I've heard of other things that may be doing, and we're looking for that. And I'm looking for somebody putting in little drill holes, and you can see some little marks there, but they don't get down into the sensitive tissue, which would be soring. So we're looking for it, we're measuring it, and we will catch them. Other things, and the long hoof can cause painful problems. And I've been very frustrated in that, is that if the horse really isn't sore, I put on my veterinary hat frequently when I'm at the shows and going, look, my friend, you have a problem. See that crack? You may not see that crack. I can see that crack. You know what's going to happen here? That foot's going to get stressed. That whole thing's going to snap, and you're not even going to have a foot left on there. Now, if it was my world, you're gone, because you're not fit to compete. And I work for the FEI as well in their program of looking at show jumpers that are hypersensitive. And so we palpate a lot of legs. And I can tell you, normal horses don't move. And we've palpated hundreds and hundreds of these, show jumpers. And, you know, you got the walking horse. Here's a really smart horse, a kind horse, a nice horse, a gentle horse. So every time I see a walking horse, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is a good guy. You know, you want to go see a show jumper, you know, the lady with the Holsteiner, yeah, fire-breathing dragon. The only way he's getting over a 5.5-foot fence is he got some fire in his soul, you know. And we've been chased out of more than one stall by one of these horses going, yeah, okay, get a groom. You're going to hold this horse because we don't want to die. But, you know, they do not move, and they're not conditioned. It's very rare. But, you know, these long feet, they do get cracks in them, and I don't think they should show. But when I've pointed it out to the caretakers, I've been very disappointed that most of them don't care. All right, so the question comes up, can those shoes cause soring? You know, it's like, well, nobody's been able to show that the shoe itself causes soring. Okay, the shoe maybe not, but the management process around this will do it, and I'll show you how it happens. And I've showed this and showed this and showed this until I'm tired of showing it. But here's a horse on stacks. You look at the back of that. See that wrinkle? Right there. That is not normal. Horses don't get wrinkles. Okay, so you take that wrinkle, you throw a chain on that, throw a little bit of lubricant, you know, throw some sand in there, start rubbing on that rascal, you know, it's going to become a scar. You may or may not have intended to do that, but now what you got, you sored a horse because that's bad management. And that's just as illegal as anything else, because that's even more illegal, because that's soring out of stupidity. Well, if you're a horseman, you're not supposed to be stupid. This is your charge. You're supposed to take care of this thing, you know. I have a little respect for the guys that cheat because they're really good at it. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say things like that. All right. So I think questions will come later.